Why do we snack? Because we have nothing better to do? Well, people who snack on almonds have something better to do. Almonds are heart healthy and full of energy, with the crunch that keeps you in the game. California almonds. Crunch on.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast on ESPNradio.com. The Best of Mike and Mike.
Hey, it's Greeny. Thanks for checking out the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. What a terrific show we have for you today. Behind the scenes of our Texas travels and our ridiculous swag bags, which led us to Jerry Jones and Dirk Nowitzki, plus Urban Meyer getting set to coach in the national championship, and an hour on set with Mark Cuban.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
And good morning. We are back and better than ever. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. And it's just a few days away now, too. We'll all be in that stadium you're seeing on our television, owned by one Jerry Jones, and we had the pleasure of sitting with yesterday for a little while, and we are getting ourselves set for what shapes up to be probably the best 3 days of football we will have all year long, with 2 days of fabulous, hopefully, certainly intriguing NFL playoff matchups, and then we got ourselves to Monday, and we'll see what happens with the national championship. A fabulous Friday today. How about this? Subway Fresh Take Hotline guest. We got Urban Meyer in this hour. We got Mark Cuban sitting on our set with us for an hour later in the program, and in between, Dirk Nowitzki and Jerry Jones. Dirk and Jerry were part of what could only be described as a grand adventure that we shared yesterday with two members of our staff.
You know, with the Chevy Chase and the vacation movies that goes on with him, they got nothing on us. We went, four of us, traversing through the Fort Worth, Dallas area, and it was memorable.
And really, nothing good came of it, with the exception of the interviews. The interviews came off extremely well.
They
Dirk
did.
was terrific. Jerry Jones was terrific. So, I mean, all that is great, and you'll hear all of it coming up with us this morning. But we had a lot of funny experiences. Josh Drew, who books our guests for us and does a fine job of that, but has proven to be really an unusual person. He's a very quirky, strange guy. And yet we made the catastrophic mistake yesterday of allowing him to be the one in charge of directing us, leading us sort of on a GPS standpoint. And let me just say this. He's not exactly Magellan.
Well, and so, can I take it back just a step further?
Please do.
First, we did all the stuff we needed to after the show.
There it is. All went well.
All went well. Josh parked the car we were going to. Josh parked the car, and we had to walk to it. And remember, it's minus 10 here now.
Yeah.
We had to walk a mile and a half to the car.
You would not believe how far away he parked.
And then, what I found out
we have police taking us everywhere we go, just walking us from one place to another. Josh parked so far away, it took us 15 minutes to walk to the car.
So that's where I first realized Josh is a great booker and an idiot and everything else.
Completely.
And this was just the start of it, but it also gave me an indication of Ray, our producer, as well. We walked a mile and a half to a shoebox.
He rented the smallest car I've ever seen in my entire life.
Think of smart car, smaller.
This was a dumb car.
It was. I was waiting for 13 clowns to get out of this car.
And in fact, only four of us got in.
And four of us got in. I am in the front seat. I think Josh even took a picture of it. I actually called my wife, and I said, Chris, we hit a curb, I'm done. I said, not even an accident. We touch a curb, and I'm through. This was the start of the trip.
I drew the short straw because I was in the back seat seated behind you. My knees, I think, were actually touching my face. It was sort of a combination of a shoe shine and like a gynecologist appointment. I was in the most ridiculously uncomfortable position for the entirety of the trip. So we have a million stories, and there are a lot of things to get to, but I have to tell the ending first.
Oh, my God.
Because the ending is the single funniest part. So our day ends at Valley Range, which, by the way, is awesome.
Yeah.
Being in the Cowboys training facility, they took us into the locker room so you could say hello to Zach Martin.
Zach Martin, a line mate of my son Mike's at Notre Dame.
And a first-team All-Pro.
By the way.
As a rookie this year with the Cowboys. So we're in the locker room, and Tony Romo, parenthetically, whom I've never met in person, makes a beeline for us, comes over, chats for about 5 minutes, could not have been nicer, and you get a really dynamic person, but whatever, none of that is the point. So then we go and we do the Jerry Jones interview. That all goes very well. And now we go back and we're sitting in the office of Rich Dalrymple, who is the director of media relations, bordering on legendary director of media
if you
relations.
saw his office, it is a shrine to unbelievable A-list celebrity-type people, including former presidents.
He's got
everywhere.
pictures of himself with basically everyone who has been president in the United States for the last 4 decades, and all kinds of signed memorabilia, Super Bowl balls, Super Bowl rings. I mean, just the most gorgeous stuff you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
At some point while we're in there, Josh comes to the realization that the little bag of crap that he brought with us as a thank you
Come on, Deirdre,
is going to seem embarrassing. So Deirdre's going to bring it up. He basically brought this little, like, $1 canvas ESPN bag, and it is filled with ESPN T-shirts that you know, college football playoff on ESPN radio. I mean, who would want that? And then these, like, 69-cent whatever you call, like these
a water bottle,
like a little water bottle. You might take it to work out with you at a football place. All right. I mean, he has his own water bottle in there that says Cowboys on it. It sort of glows. It has different.
They have their own water.
Yeah, they have their own water. They have their own Cowboys water they're drinking.
But so, Josh has this bag full of a couple of shirts and a couple of water bottles.
So Josh has to then make a decision. None of us know he's doing this.
No.
So Josh has to make a decision while we're sitting in the office. Does he hand the gift to Rich, which is going to be humiliating?
Which, by the way, if we were in on this and knew it, we would have stolen it from him to not hand it to Rich.
The other option that a normal person would exercise is just realize this isn't a good idea and bring the bag back to the car.
Take it with you.
Josh chooses neither of these. He just leaves the bag behind in the office.
Why don't you just be at the airport and leave a bag on a chair?
That's exactly
and walk
right.
away from it.
I thought the TSA. So now we get into our little shoebox of a car.
And oh, by the way, we didn't know he left it in there. This is still unbeknownst to the rest of us. We're sitting in our shoebox of a car.
And I turn to my right and I say, oh, Rich is running out of the building towards us. I wonder what happened.
With the bag.
He's running back because he is returning the bag. He thought we left it behind by accident. So he's coming towards us. Josh, you left your bag in here. So now Josh has to sheepishly take it.
Before we even get there, Rich is coming toward my window. Josh is in the back seat. I said, Josh, get out of this car right now. I'm not talking to him about that embarrassment that's running at us right now.
So Josh takes the bag back sheepishly. This is the bag.
This is the bag.
This isn't a replica of the bag.
No, it's the bag.
Because who would want the bag? So he brings that. This is his idea of a gift. Then he just decides to leave it. I said to him, what made you decide to leave it? He said, well, I was hoping he'd see it and think, oh, what a nice gift that they left something behind.
Here, let me move aside the picture of me with Bill Clinton and put the water bottle there. That's what I'm going to do.
It was... I swear to you, we're not making up a word of this.
No, we're not.
And the entirety of this entire experience that we were all together was probably 6 or 7 hours long. That was probably the most cogent thing that Josh did during that period of time. So anyway, it was just sort of a funny way to kick off our day yesterday here as we lead into a football Friday. But if anyone would like, these, by all means, I'll be glad to give them out.
They'll be laying in the street out here where we're going to throw them.
Stop by Rich Dalrymple's office. He's got plenty of them sitting in there. Anyway, we're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Last year, over 3 million drivers switched to Progressive. Call or click today. Find out if you could save. We really need to get better gifts. If we're going to visit impressive people,
I mean,
we need to bring a real gift.
And the people that come to our show out here, I'm sure they would love something like this. It's just Rich. Listen, he's seen a lot.
Yeah,
it's like a shrine in his office.
Here's a T-shirt. Thanks for coming. Good to see you.
Hide it under your jacket and sulk out of there.
It was just terrific. I mean, he comes running out. I didn't know any of this had happened. So when he comes running out, I said, "Oh, why is Rich running after
us with an ESPN bag?"
That was very funny. Okay. Anyway, so that was part of our day yesterday. But of course, that brings us to Jerry Jones, which brings us to the Mueller report, which was released yesterday. Now, we just had about a 20-minute conversation here as a staff, and we unanimously agreed that on the weekend before all of these great football games, you do not want to hear us spend a whole lot of time talking about this Mueller report. There will be plenty of time to talk about it in the future the bottom line of it is really nothing of consequence came out in the Mueller report. If you were expecting much, I don't know that you got it. The bottom line is we found no evidence that anyone at the NFL had or saw the in-elevator video before it was publicly shown. We also found no evidence that a woman at the NFL acknowledged receipt of that video in a voicemail message on April 9th, 2014. Roger Goodell subsequently, in his statement, said that they interviewed every woman who was an employee of the National Football League on the date that that phone call was made that was reported by the Associated Press. Every one of those women was interviewed, and all of them said they did not make that phone call. So the one big question that everyone had about the Mueller report was, would there be a smoking gun? Would it turn out that that tape was in the building, that someone of consequence should have seen it, had to have seen it, and that they were lying? As I've said from the very beginning of this, there are mistakes that are legitimate,
right.
And then there are mistakes that are dishonest. If this had turned out to be a dishonest mistake, which I did not expect it to be, but if it had turned out to be that, then I think a lot of people, perhaps up to and including the commissioner, were going to lose their job. And if it turned out just to have been something that they screwed up, a situation that should have been handled much better, then it's going to be exactly what it is, which is basically a report that is a little bit of a finger wag, you should have done better. Here are ways you can do better. They've already implemented part of that. The owners are going to come out unanimously behind Roger, and they're going to move on.
Yep, they are. That's exactly what's going to happen. So that's what came out of this. No smoking gun. They said there should have been, the report said there should have been more of a thorough investigation, and you need to start doing this, and this, things that the league has already implemented in the new policy. So that's basically it. And like with anything in the cycle of sports, the way it works, it's going to move on. It's going to move on, and we're going to move past it. The league has been through a very rough year, but the league survived it. You look at attendance, you look at popularity of the game. Do you think anything waned at all? I don't think anything waned at all.
I think there was zero impact to the bottom line. There was obviously zero impact to television ratings. I think that there was an image hit that was taken, and deservedly so. I think they deserved the criticism that they received. I think that there were hopefully there was a wake-up call in all of this. And as Jerry Jones said to us, we're going to play you a little snippet of Jerry Jones on this. We were in the car on our way to interviewing Jerry Jones and lost, thanks Josh Drew, because on our way there, when the news came out that the Mueller report had been released, we didn't know.
We did not
know it was going to be out.
Right as we pulled into Valley Ranch, yeah.
So we had spent a lot of time preparing what we wanted to ask Jerry Jones, and then a lot of that had to go by the wayside because, of course, it began with this. Here is a little bit. We'll play it for you in its entirety. The Jerry Jones interview will air at 8:25 Eastern, 7:25 here in Texas, in the Central Time Zone. But here is a little bit of what Jerry Jones said to us about the release of the Mueller report.
The report certainly validated what the owners have known all along. Roger's going to be honest. He's going to be straight with everybody concerned. And it also said that the process needs to be improved. Roger has said that all along, and everybody agrees.
So that's a little piece again, and he will go into more in depth of this. But at one point in the interview, I'll tell you now, we asked him about what he thinks are the greatest accomplishments that he has had and the league has had during his now quarter of a century in ownership. And he went right to his surprise at just how powerful and big and far-reaching the league has become, and how with that comes great responsibility and obligation in areas like this. And I think if there's one thing that has come out of this whole thing for me, it is that. It is that the National Football League is so powerful, and to whom much is given, of whom much is expected.
Right.
They're not experts in the area of dealing with the huge societal problem that is domestic violence, but you know what? It wound up in their kitchen, and it is they have an obligation, in my opinion, to do whatever they can about it, to be leaders in that area, and I think they have begun the process of doing so.
They fell short of that, and you see other leagues having some of a couple of domestic violence issues, and we're seeing how they deal with it, and because of what the NFL went through, it's going to be tightened up in a lot of places, as well it should. I think that's exactly what you said. Even the league admitted the mistakes that they made, and we have to go forward, and it's got to be taken more seriously, and I think that's a good analogy. It did end up in their kitchen, and realize, we can have an impact and effect on this, but we have to be more responsive to it and get more information about it, and that's what they're surrounding themselves with more. So let's hope going forward that's the direction it goes.
All right, so that's again, we'll talk about this more. If you are interested in talking about it, we certainly could talk about it all morning long with you. It was the biggest story of the year. In fact, I saw Last week or so, all of the different news networks put out their top 10 stories of the year. And, the Ray Rice situation in particular and the NFL's handling of it and reaction thereof in general were on everyone's top 10 list. I mean, top 5 stories of the year, 4th biggest story of the year, 6th biggest story of the year. And it is one that, while obviously extraordinarily difficult for the people involved, I think could wind up being a very good thing, which is to say I think it opened a lot of eyes to a problem that maybe many of us had not paid much attention to before. And maybe a significant difference will be made as a result of it. If that's the case, then maybe we can say in some ways you can bring some positive out of what was really an awful situation.
It goes back to this Ray Rice thing happened, and I'll read part of the statement from John Meyer and Art Rooney, presidents of Giants and the Steelers.
And they were the ones who commissioned Robert Mueller.
This matter has tarnished the reputation of the NFL due to our failure to hand out proper punishment. Remember when this thing started? You said, don't care what any policy or anything before this has happened, throw them out for the year. Throw them out for the year and let the union fight to get them back before that. And I think you were right. If that would have happened, instead of the 2 games, it was a year, there would have been some fighting and yelling the other way. But I think a lot of this would have been avoided.
Well, that goes back, again, to get sort of sucked back into the conversation. That goes all the way back to the beginning with the difference of why didn't they? Why was it only 2 games? And I will continue to say I genuinely believe it was because they mistakenly thought this was where they screwed it up, that was the appropriate punishment. The flip side of that is that they made a deal with him and made a deal with him, and they knew what was going on, and they tried to cover it up, and they were helping out Steve Bisciotti, and they were and I said all along that didn't make sense to me. Why in the world would this multi-billion-dollar organization, why would Roger Goodell, who was had been routinely voted the most powerful man in sports, endanger or jeopardize his standing and his position for Ray Rice? It never made sense to me. They've thrown the book at people so many times over so much less that it did not make sense to me that he would just, in this particular case, decide, you know what, I'm going to take it easy. So do you know what happened? I think what happened was they didn't know what the protocol was. Mm-hmm. They didn't know not to interview the two of them together.
How much were they influenced, would they admit, by what happened from the legal side of it, where he basically got a slap on the wrist, something in the new policy they said they are not, beholden to.
The one thing I'll say, though, in regards to that is go tell Ben Roethlisberger that doesn't make any difference. Yeah. Ben Roethlisberger was never charged with anything, and he got suspended. 6 games reduced to 4. So anyway, the point is, I think a few truths in this are undeniable. And they acknowledge that the league screwed this thing up at the beginning. They acknowledge it freely, to their credit. They have already instituted changes to their personal conduct policy, and in particular how they're going to handle incidents like this. The Mueller report comes out and shows no smoking gun. I think that we now judge them going forward. They will never. What has happened will never be erased, but it hasn't had any obvious tangible impact on people's interest in or love for the game and the sport of football. So on we will go. I don't know that there's a whole lot more to be done or said about it than that. I hope that a lot can be learned, and that a lot of good can come from this, that a light can be shown upon what is an insidious and hideous problem in our society. And if the NFL can be leaders in trying to do something about that going forward, then maybe there is a silver lining around the dark cloud.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Towards the far right corner of the end zone, it's a jump ball, and it's intercepted by Ohio State. This game is going to end. The Buckeyes are headed to the national championship game to take out Oregon.
I tell you what, Mike, with those words, Urban Meyer and the Ohio State Buckeyes continue to write what has been one of the most improbable scripts we have seen in recent college football memory. On their 3rd quarterback, they have now marched all the way to the first ever college football national playoff championship game. We're here in Fort Worth for that on Monday night.
I mean, and really it's incredible. By the time they get to their 3rd quarterback, who's coming off a 59-0 win over Wisconsin at a Big Ten championship game, and only his 2nd start against Alabama, finds himself and his team down 21-6. So things not looking great. And as I said, those last couple of minutes of the first half getting the scores and the first score of the third quarter, you want to talk about a momentum changer from 21-6 to 21-20 at half to 27-21 lead, and on they went.
And I'm told Urban Meyer is ready to go with us. Our pleasure to welcome the coach of the Buckeyes, Urban Meyer, on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. And, Coach, we really appreciate you taking a few minutes in what we know is a really busy time. So let's start with that. We hear football coaches talk all the time about adversity. You're going to face adversity, and your team this season has faced almost ridiculous amounts of adversity of a variety of kinds, injuries and tragedy and deficits and coming from behind. What does it say about a team, and how, as a coach, have you managed to keep this team moving and winning through all of the adversity it has faced?
Well, we had a gentleman years ago, and I think it was in 08, came in and spoke to our team down when I was at Florida. And it was a field commander from Black Hawk Down, and he would talk about adversity, obviously tremendous adversity in that movie, which is a real story. And it's not, how do you measure success? We talk to our team about this all the time. You're going to hit adversity. How do you respond to the events that happen in your life? And if you come out stronger, that's success. And this is one of the greatest testimonies that I've ever been around, as far as everybody preaches it. And obviously, you get the human element involved, which are 18 to 21-year-olds. But this is one of the greatest testimonies, one of the greatest case studies of a group of players that adversity didn't tear them apart, it made them stronger.
You've been part of the BCS National Championship game, so from the last game of the season, a conference championship, to a title game, the time that you have to play one game. Now it's the possibility of two games. How, if at all, does that change preparation for coaches and or players?
Oh, I remember when I first heard about it, it was, kind of sat there and, you start thinking about the logistics of the families of the players, and obviously we can discuss that. I'm glad the NCAA did the right thing to get the families there, because there's a lot of issues that I don't think were discussed, and the most important issue is the players that put on the helmets and the shoulder pads. Everything else to me is really, I hate to say it, not important at all. But the players playing this game, the wear and tear, the three games that we've played, the Big Ten Championship, the Sugar Bowl, and then this one, we've been real creative on how to get a team ready, because you're dealing with, I think we have 12 guys out with season-ending injuries, and I know everybody's dealing with those injuries, but this is uncharted waters on how do you get this team ready. So it is completely different than anything I've ever experienced in coaching.
Mike and Mike, Urban Meyer, by the way, amen. I applaud, I know, Mike, you do as well, the decision to allow the schools, to allow the families to travel. They'll do that for the Final Four as well, for the men's and the women's. So I think all of us agree that was an excellent decision. Urban, the old adage in football has always been, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one. Well, it turns out you have three. So here you are with with Cardale Jones getting set to play in the national championship game. What does he bring? We've all gotten now the chance to see these two terrific performances. What does he bring to your offense that perhaps the other two did not?
Well, we've been very fortunate. Three excellent players. When Braxton went down, I was a little surprised at the development and the quick development of JT. JT actually was beaten out by Cardale in the spring because Braxton was going through a shoulder injury that he sustained in the Orange Bowl. And then JT beat him out just because JT's a grinder. He's a preparation guy. He's a guy he's a gym rat. He's not quite the physical stature as Cardale. Cardale gives you a freak. I mean, he's 6'5". He's I always talk about this high to low thrower. He can go right over the top of a defensive line because he's got a real strong arm, and he gives you that pocket presence that I was trying to think. The last guy that was that big was Alex Smith I had at Utah was could stand tall in that pocket, and they're just hard to find because you can't. The way we play, you have to be able to move too. That's a prerequisite. You have to have mobility, and he gives us both.
Have you told him when he's running to not try and jump over people?
We've chatted briefly about that, but I don't like when he launches. I like when he drops his pads. But he's a competitive guy. The one thing that all three of those guys share, and it's really the common denominator of any great player at any position, is the competitive spirit of all three of those guys is fun to watch.
And let's talk about, obviously, that's a huge story, the three quarterbacks and what you've been able to do with that. But let's also be honest, you don't win that Alabama game without Zeke Elliott and what he does at running back. So talk about him a bit, and let's give him the love he deserves.
One of the best backs in the country. We were the Big Ten Conference this year. You'll see it in the draft, I'm sure, that I've never seen a collection of backs in one conference like this, and our guy was just kind of another name, and if I have my draft, I got the back I want, and he's a great post-contact runner. He's very good pad level on top of everything. He's a great kid that plays harder without the ball. So he's kind of the pathfinder for our entire team as far as how to, the selfless approach to the game. So great player that has really seen the rewards of a much improved offensive line as well.
Mike and Mike, Urban Meyer is with us. Of course, the opponent you face, Oregon. Everyone talks about the tempo, how quickly they run their plays, how up-tempo their offense is, and how difficult that is to contend with. It's not the first time you've seen an up-tempo offense, obviously, but they seem to do it about as well as it's ever been done. If you had to put your finger on the one defensive key to dealing with a team that is running that quickly and that efficiently, what is it? What's the single thing your defense has to do to have success?
Well, you have to defeat the demon. It's composure. It's when you see Michigan State with excellent defense, you see Florida State excellent defenses, and there's about 6 other opportunities where at halftime it's real close. Then you start to see chaos. Fatigue brings on. There's some great quote. Fatigue makes cowards of us all. Where you get tired, you blame, you get out of your gaps, and then you start creating conflict on your defense. And, a bubble screen for a touchdown or a fake bubble for a touchdown because someone, because of fatigue, they give in. And so that's going to be the key. And we've worked, I can't imagine working any harder on that. Now it's a matter of putting it in play.
And obviously you guys work on it, no doubt about it. But certainly, when I was at Notre Dame, and Notre Dame continues to play the military schools, those are 1, 2, 3 times a year you play the option. That you have to try and prepare for that. And no matter what you simulate in practice, it's never the real thing once it gets to game day.
Right.
Could that happen here where you can simulate it all you want, but until the lights go on and actual Oregon is doing it to you, they're not really going to know what to expect?
Well, Ryan Stamper, he was the captain of our 08 national championship team, and we played Oklahoma. And Oklahoma was another team that was a very, very high-tempo team, and we practiced 2 huddles at them. And, worked, we even had more time. I want to say it was about 40 days to get ready for that darn thing. And he said the first 15 minutes of the game, he couldn't breathe. He was just trying to get his composure back. So that will happen. It's not maybe, that will happen. The only thing he can do is warn them, train them, and fight through that.
And final thought for you, Urban Meyer, as you get set to travel here to Fort Worth. Dress warm, by the way.
Yes.
It's a little chilly, although I'm sure it's not that warm in Columbus either. This became a huge topic of conversation on our show yesterday. The Ohio schools are not closing on Tuesday, and Golick is extremely upset about this. Do you believe that schools across the state of Ohio should be shut down on Tuesday so everyone can enjoy watching a game on Monday night?
Well, I think I'm not going to answer that because that'll be a headline somewhere, and some administrator will get me for that. So I've got a lot of things to worry about, and I know one thing: the great state of Ohio is going to support the Buckeyes Monday night.
There you go.
That's
I say take school off. I'll say it for you.
Golick is against education in practically every form. Again, it's the College Football National Championship. It's Monday night on ESPN Radio, ESPN TV, the Watch ESPN app, and we're all looking forward to watching it. Urban, congratulations on an amazing ride, and good luck on Monday night.
You guys are great. Thank you.
Mike and Mike.
It's our distinct pleasure once again down here in Dallas to have a few minutes with the Mavericks superstar, Dirk Nowitzki. And Dirk, first and foremost, I know the reason that you were willing to do this is the last time we did this, you may recall, Mike and I were down here, we sat on the court and did an interview with you, and you went on and won the championship that year, so I have a feeling we're your good luck. I know that's why you wanted to do it again.
That's why I'm here. It's early in the morning getting this done.
Yeah, it's true that you requested us, I'm sure. At least that's what we want to think anyway.
Yeah, no, I said, Mike, gotta come through Dallas. Sure.
Fascinating time. There's so much to get into with you. Let's start with the major acquisition your team made just recently in a jam-packed Western Conference where there are so many really good teams, and you go out and you acquire a difference-making player like Rajon Rondo. Give me a sense of how you feel that is coming together now and what you think that adds to your team as you head towards the playoffs.
I think it's been a great acquisition. I think we're struggling. We were struggling the first couple of games just to get used to each other. He's a completely unique player in his offensive ability, what he brings. So it took us a few games, but I think we look good lately. He's a great defender, one of the best passers we have in the league. And we tweaked a few things offensively. Obviously, someone put him into some of the stuff that he was great at in Boston. But I think we're we managed well. I think we all know he's a very, very smart player, so he picked offense up extremely quick. He knows where the guys want the ball already, and I think he feels extremely comfortable already.
One of the things we talk about is the depth in conference, and certainly with LeBron at Miami, they got the Eastern Conference gets a lot of share of the talk, but very top-heavy. And in the Western Conference, it seems this year, more than other years, we just go, oh my God! I mean, there's a great team after great team. You've been at this a long, long time in this conference. Tough to say over all those years to rate if this is the deepest it's been, but this has to be one of the deeper years of the conference, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's been amazing. But already I feel like the last couple of years, it's always been a slugfest in the West, just to get in the playoffs. I mean, we felt like we had a decent year last year and almost had 50 wins, and we're the 8th seed and running San Antonio in the first round and ended up losing in 7. So it's been tough just to make the playoffs, and there's going to be some epic first round matches coming up this year. So it's in a way it's fun. If you're a competitor, you love to compete at the highest level every night. I mean, that's where you want to be, but it's sometimes it's a little tough.
Dirk Nowitzki with us here, Mike and Mike, and we offer our congratulations, as this has been a season of milestone accomplishments, moving past some legendary players on the all-time scoring list. And I just wonder if we were talking, Mike and I and our staff in the car on the way over here, if you judge foreign-born players by guys who didn't play in college in the United States, so take out a guy like Hakeem Olajuwon, who played, in the United States, we came to the conclusion you're the greatest foreign-born player, the greatest foreign player in NBA history. I just wonder if you think about it that way. Do you think about that from a legacy standpoint of what you've been able to do nowadays? Seems almost every team has guys who came from other countries, but you really may be the greatest ever and the first in that line of things. Do you ever stop and think about it in that way?
I feel like there were some international guys that kind of paved the way for me,
Like who
I was, Detlef Schrempf is a German guy, so,
sure.
He was big in Germany. We all watched him. He had a great career. He was all-star. He was best sixth man. He was in the finals a couple times. There was a Kukoc. There was, Divac and all these guys that I loved watching growing up. And I think Petrovic, who obviously passed away early in his career, but amazing player in Europe. And I think they kind of paved the way for us. And then, what kind of helped me, I think, was the rule change, and when they started every four-man can move now, can shoot. I think that they put in the zone. So I think the game changed a little bit in the NBA. When I first got there, it was more of one-on-one, physical battle, back downs for 10 seconds. And when the rule changed, it kind of fell right in my lap. That's what I do. We learned how to grow up, move without the ball, be open, shoot, run, pass. And so I was a little fortunate to come right in that era when the rule just changed, and it was great for me. So I guess I was a little fortunate. And now, you look at the game, it's the Spurs showed it last year. It's every guy can shoot a score on the court. You move it, you pass it. It's so much fun to watch. It's almost no dribbling, no holding the ball. Everybody got to be able to shoot and move. Even the fours. Some of the fives now in the league can spread the floor till 17, 18 feet, and it's been fun to watch.
There's been a lot of talk about Kobe Bryant and his contract, and we might put that on one side of a decision that a veteran star made, and then you come over to the other side, a guy like Tim Duncan and now a guy like yourself. You're the lowest paid starter on the Dallas Mavericks, and you're a first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the great players of all time. Can you take us through that mindset? What led you to that decision, what it means, and how at this stage in your career that seems to be the right place for you?
Well, first of all, I think Mark, we all know Cuban has been great to me my entire career. He's been my number one fan, my number one supporter, and he paid me a great amount of money throughout my entire career. So would I have made the same sacrifice at 24? Probably not. But at this stage of my career, I wanted to show some loyalty back to him. He's been great to me. And also, the biggest reason is I wanted to be part of a winning team again. We won the championship in 11, and after that we had the lockout, and the whole cap thing changed a little bit, and we had to make some business decisions. And we just weren't, frankly, very good. We were 8th seed the next year afterwards, after the championship, where we didn't make the playoffs the following year. And as you get older, I think it's just all about winning. It's, scoring records, all-star games, all that's fun in your 20s. But when you're old, you want to be in a winning environment. It's more fun every day coming to work. The atmosphere is better. The coaches are in a better mood. So I just want to be a part of a winning team again. And I'm glad it worked out that way. You know, getting Monterey last year was a heck of a find. And then this year, obviously getting Tyson back was been so great to us that 1 year in the championship year. And now getting Rondo and Parsons from Houston. And so we're happy. We're in a good place. We just got to make it work.
To you, does it seem odd that the best players normally make the most money? And Greeny has brought this up. It seems now in the NBA system, if a great, even older player takes all the money that they can get, which, hey, they have every right to, that they're looked upon as, oh, well, they don't care about the team because they have a tough time building because of that. It seems weird that the best players can't try and seek the most money, and when they do, it's kind of frowned upon.
Well, I think that's where Kobe is right in a way. You know, the salary cap now is kind of set up where, you know, just a few guys can make the big money. So you kind of got to find, I guess, a middle ground. And that's what Kobe was saying now, that the media is almost looking at him like he did a bad thing, which, you know, he did what was right for him in his situation. And I guess we don't have the right to judge him for it. And but that's how it's set up, and I'm sure in the next bargaining agreement we're going to talk about some of this stuff with the new TV money kicking in now again with the new deal they signed. So I'm sure the cap will go up and all that stuff. But as for right now, I think that was the best decision for me and for the Mavs, and I'm happy we're on a good team again.
Mike and Mike, Dirk Nowitzki is with us here for just another moment as we get set to finish up this season, and obviously so much exciting stuff going on around here. I wonder, internationally, people point back to 1992 and the Dream Team and how that grew the game so much. I wonder if you could sort of put a tangible face or experience to that. When you go back home or when you're in Europe or in other places, how much bigger is the game of basketball now than it was, let's say, when you were growing up?
Yeah, I think it's become global, unbelievable. You know, when I travel this summer, wherever I am, Asia, I went to Australia a few years ago. I mean, people recognize me and take pictures, and it's been amazing. You know, the 92 team was fantastic. I remember that was the time when I just started getting into basketball. I was like 13, 14. And Charles Barkley was my guy, so I was rocking 14 growing up in Germany because of Charles wore 14 in the Olympics. So that was an amazing moment for basketball, and it's been on the rise ever since. Now we have players in the league from Africa, Asia, Australia. I mean, we're Europe, obviously tons. So it's been amazing. It's been fun to watch how global the game has gotten, and I think it's still growing.
Now to the serious questions of this interview. If basketball never existed, you're a great athlete, what sport would you be playing?
I actually was a tennis player, believe it or not.
Really? What a serve that had.
Yeah. I played tennis when I was like 4 or 5 years old. It was my first sport. You know, my parents were in this tennis club, and they were kind of like, after they were done in the evenings, they would just sit there with their friends and maybe have a few beers, and I was just on the court for like hours and hours at a time running around. I'm not sure if I would have gotten any good, but I love tennis.
You could cover some court, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I got
I would not like to try and lob over you.
You better at the piano or the guitar?
I tried a few instruments over my career. I have a drum set at home. I played some saxophone. I played the guitar.
I sold you short. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I'm really multi-talented, but I'm actually not good in either. You know, it gets to like a point where, okay, I can play a few tunes, and then to really get better, you got to sit down, you got to practice, and I always lose a little interest, unfortunately. So I'm really good at like 4 or 5 things, but I'm not really
How about
good.
Singing?
That was actually one of my worst features, especially when I sang "We Are the Champions." I always get grief for that. So singing is not my thing.
You know, you mentioned, you're an older player. You've been around it a really long time. Have you had a chance to think? Do you spend any time thinking about what the next mountain is to climb? I mean, professional athletes, you feel old now. Derek Jeter said, I was old and then I retired and all of a sudden I was young. You're going to have a lot of life left ahead of you. Have you stopped and thought about what you want to do in your life and accomplish in your life when this ends?
Well, I think I'm definitely going to be a family man first. During the season we travel a lot. You guys know. I mean, it's tough to kind of see your kids, and so I'm going to definitely take a few years, maybe to sit back and relax, let everything sink in, and then I think I'm going to stay around basketball. Though it's my love. It's something that gave me so much, and I think I almost owe it a little bit to give something back, some of my knowledge. So I'm sure I'll be teaching somebody in my jump shot one day. I'm not sure when that is. Maybe somewhere down the line. But I think first I'm gonna step away a little bit and get some breathing room, and then I'll find a couple new things to do.
Well, he's got a 12-year-old that's a shooting guard.
Oh, yeah. He doesn't figure to be 7 feet tall.
Yeah, but
he doesn't have to be. If he can shoot, he doesn't need to be 7.
Well, there are a lot of 5'11" Jewish point guards. Anyway, all kidding aside, pleasure to see you as always. Thank you. Continued success. We appreciate it.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike, we continue in Valley Ranch, and it is our pleasure to welcome now the longtime and legendary owner of the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones. Thank you so much for taking some time for us.
Well, I'm happy to be here, and we're sitting here in the area where the cheerleaders perform. While I'll get my little plug in there, they've entertained more troops in the world than Bob Hope. And they were the first Bob Hope recipient of it. So we're proud of these cheerleaders.
Well, you should be.
It's a pleasure to be here, and we thank you for inviting us. And let's start literally in the car on the way over here. We received the news that the Mueller report had been released. So have you had a chance to digest it? What is your reaction to what Robert Mueller found?
Well, I have been on a call with all the other owners, and the report certainly validated what the owners have known all along. That Roger's going to be honest, he's going to be straight with everybody concerned, and it also said that the process needs to be improved. Roger has said that all along, and everybody agrees. This domestic violence thing certainly is an area that, with our visibility as a league, with what we have the opportunity to do, we shouldn't just count on law enforcement's reports. When it's a player or someone involved in the NFL, we should go farther and do our own work on it. And the report says that, and we agree with that. But it's certainly substantiated that Roger's the guy that not only handled that in a way that the owners feel okay with, knowing we could all do better. But he certainly is the guy that do it the right way in the future.
So as this year went on and all the league went through this year with the different situations and now the Mueller report out, so you see where the owners are with Roger Goodell. Where do you think the league is with the public? And where do you think, or how do you think that will improve if you think it's been diminished?
One of the things that's happened going to the store here, for me, to use an old term, 25 years ago when I got in the NFL, it never occurred to me that we in the NFL would have the substance, the visibility, that social issues, not just the NFL's issues, which are a part of and manifest social, but social issues would be something that we can impact or we can do something about, bullying. So that certainly domestic violence is something that we all deplore. Mm-hmm. There's no place there in the workplace of the NFL or sports or any place. We can use all this visibility. And when I got involved, all I wanted to do was figure out how to pay for the Cowboys and figure out how to coach football. Mm-hmm. And it didn't occur to me that as this thing goes along that some of these issues we could do something about. Now, these are big societal issues that if we had all the answers, then we maybe ought to be going for higher ground, but we don't have those answers. But we can certainly do something about it. Everybody's in agreement that we should use this visibility. We should use these examples. Last year, I think in a 12-month period, we had 2 these domestic violence examples in a league of almost 2,000-something players. To give you an idea, that's much less than the society as a whole. But still, we have a chance with all this visibility that we have to do something more about it. And I think everybody's in the same seat to do something about it.
So to finish on that topic, what do you hope are the lasting ramifications of this year? For the ups and the downs, whatever it has been and whatever it is that can be learned, what do you hope are 5 years from now the results that come from what happened in the NFL in 2014?
Well, I think that we got our eyes opened in some areas, and I've just talked too long about some of the society type things. But I hope that it caused us to change some of the things we're doing, put more emphasis on it. In this case, if you mess up and you're part of the NFL, owners included, then we're not going to just depend upon what the criminal aspect and what laws had to say about it and the procedures there. We're going to see for ourselves if we want that or you to be a part going forward of the NFL.
So as we move from that to, and want to get to certainly your team here and the playoffs coming up, we're down here for the first college football national championship of the first year of a college playoff system, and you're hosting the big game. So, I mean, just the magnitude of what this playoff system has been nationwide, and now you hosting the first game, just your thoughts about that.
Well, I thought it was brilliant. Mike Slive, all of those great executives that really have been advocates of this for quite some time. But to take that great game, and we all are a big fan of college football, but to take that game and as an adjunct to Notre Dame playing Boston College in those big games that the tradition of them will never go away, as an adjunct, have a playoff effort going on at the same time. And by what do you mean have really competent people sitting there rating them as the season goes along? That's I read about the game. Let me get over and look at the ratings now and look at that. I think it's brilliant from the standpoint of creating interest in the game and using the interest that's in the game. Being able to have a place that you could do a great event that in and of itself could be iconic. Now, that's a dream for me.
Mike and Mike, Jerry Jones is with us here. Let's get to this year's Cowboys football team. We've heard a lot of debate about Tony Romo's plays, DeMarco Murray, obviously Des Bryant. In your mind, who was the most valuable player on the Dallas Cowboys this year?
Well, I'm an offensive lineman, and I've got to tell you that unit, who in a way can set the face or set the temperament or the identity of a team, that offensive line would be hard to overlook as the most valuable player. On the other hand, I will say that what Romo has done with Coach Garrett and Scott Linehan, and what they have done to take this offense, use that line, which is a part of what I'm fixing to say, use the running backs that we've got, and basically get physical and at the same time say, now if you want to plug it up and you want to really plug it up, we've got a boy number 9 back here that can put some unplugging to you with a little of the passing game. That's what we had when Troy Aikman, when they bunched up there to stop that Emmitt Smith. The balance of having Aikman able to throw those strikes down the field was a great combination. So our most valuable players are balanced.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear you say that. I think the conventional wisdom about you and your leadership of the football part of this operation was that you loved the splash, you loved the passing game, you loved the big numbers and all that. Did you have to be, because this is a team that now really is built from the line of scrimmage out, did you have to be talked into that? Did you have to be pulled into that, into accepting that idea that was the way to build a football team?
The greatest way to get me to go in a coma is to have your first down made, whether it's second or third down, and not go ahead and get the down, move the chains, and go again. So it's been a misnomer that I'm all for stepping back here and throwing that thing big and deep. The fundamentals are that we've got to move the chain. Any success that I've been a part of fundamentally used the running game and had it at the right time. whether it be to set the stage early in the game or whether it be to finish it out at the end. That's where we've had our success. We just, for whatever the reason, wouldn't keep bought into it. We had Romo, who's had a great career here. It'd be a shame, it'd be tragic if he should have a career here and not have a Super Bowl. And that's mismanaging on my part not to have had the cast around him if he can't get that done.
Well, let me go there. You've obviously so involved with every aspect of this team, and over the last few years, averaging out being basically a 500 team, and this year doing what you're doing, 12-4, and going into the divisional round right now. Is there vindication for you in that?
Well, you can call it anything you want to. I just like to win. And we have won more than 500, but you know what I'm fixing to say next. When we won those 3 Super Bowls in my first years in the NFL, I made a deal upstairs, and I said, I'll never ask for anything else if you'll just let me win one more. And I've been trying to retract that deal all these years and figure out what I've got that we could give to get another one. And so to have a chance to be here and sit here and compete. But, over a period of time, I have always thought, with the exception of the frailty of having a little weak at this particular spot, I've always thought that we had a chance to win it. Winning can cause that to happen, so it does feed on itself. I've been a part of that here with the Cowboys. Maybe we can do it again.
Mike and Mike, Jerry Jones is with us here, getting set to go to Lambeau. First time the Cowboys have been to Lambeau Field in the postseason since the Ice Bowl, one of the legendary games of all time. Let's talk about Governor Christie. There's obviously so much attention on his Cowboys fandom, and back in the East where we generally make our homes, everyone talks about it all the time. How did that begin? What is the relationship, and will he be there with you at Lambeau Field?
Well, I've got him 2 seats for him to be there for sure, and we certainly have been on a winning streak since he not only has been at the game, but we've had a chance to sit together during that time. You guys know, now it's not uncommon for noteworthy people of politics to be in people's suites that follow teams. I've had the privilege of getting to watch a game and have him in the dressing room after the game with Mandela. And so I've had games watched with Bill Clinton and with President Bush. And so we're not talking about something out of the ordinary here. And I wasn't trying to change foreign policy either when we were doing it. What we were all doing was trying to watch a good football game and watch the Cowboys win. That's where it is with him. He's a friend through the Cowboys. And we noting that and seeing that, and you know how he is now. He's a lot of things, but he's not going to. He's going to sit there and be true blue. He's what you get.
He's going to wear the orange sweater.
And I admire that in him. I admire that in him.
Yeah.
And so it's been exciting. It's been excited that we're winning. He's as excited as any Cowboy fan I've ever met, and I hope he just keeps coming to games for about the next 3 and keeps stirring it up out here and getting criticized. But he's our mojo.
Yep.
Let me finish with 2 thoughts. You've been the owner of the Cowboys, as you said, a long time. You've seen unbelievable growth in the National Football League during your time and in this franchise. Looking back on your years, what do you consider to be your greatest accomplishment? Well, you know, anything we're talking about, since it's been that way ever since you've ever put a cleat on, is a team thing. I would have never dreamed 25 years ago that we would be of the top 25 shows in the United States last year. 24 of them were NFL football games. I wouldn't have dreamed we had the popularity that we've had. I've always underestimated the popularity of the Dallas Cowboys. I'll say this, when the Cowboys sit here and are watched by 43 million people last weekend as a part of the NFL, when we're sitting out here with a stadium that had 91,000 people in there, and they're just rabid and getting excited about that ball game, that feels good. And then just very quickly, a final one. How about your greatest regret? Well, looking back on it over all these years, what would be the greatest regret that you've had? The one thing you've looked at and said, I would love to have undone that.
Well, we don't have a program long enough to get into this deal right here. I've got legal pads that high of those miscues all the way. But I would say at this juncture that if we let Romo get through here with that career and don't get him a Super Bowl, I'm going to have to put that right at the top of my own field disappointment and own field falling short. Because I know who, at the end of the day, has got to put that cast around him, and I know he'll help made a lot of decisions around here. So with his kind of talent, he should have been a Super Bowl quarterback, and let's hope we can get him there.
Could be this next couple of weeks. Jerry Jones, we thank you very much.
Guys,
thank you so much.
A lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
The best of Mike and Mike.
It would not be a trip for us to North Texas if we not get a chance to say hello to one of our favorites. The longtime owner of the Dallas Mavericks, Mark Cuban, is on our set. Great to see you, Mark.
I know, long time doesn't sound right, does it?
I know. But it is. How many years now?
15 years, January 4th.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it?
And we're 16 years together, this guy. And
really
so,
amazing.
yeah, we're all doing this thing sort of
by
together.
the way, talk to Dirk yesterday. What a guy. He's
a great guy.
Great things to say about you as well, but just what a class act all the way around.
Yeah, he's the guy you want to hang out with, a guy you want to party with, a guy you'd let your daughter marry, if he wasn't already married.
Yeah. He said something interesting. Why don't we start there? Why don't we start there? I asked him about, there are two kinds of aging NBA stars today. There are those like Kobe Bryant, who took the money that was there to him. He actually took less than he was entitled to, but he got himself paid, and in my opinion, no one should criticize that.
It's his choice.
And then there are guys, the template maybe set by Tim Duncan, and now Dirk doing the same, where here he is at this stage of his career. He's actually the lowest paid starter on your team. And I asked him about that decision, and the first thing he said was, I wanted to give something back to Mark. I wanted to show loyalty to him. He has showed loyalty to me. We aired that earlier this morning, that interview. But how about your thoughts on that, on this situation in the NBA now, where you could have a superstar, and he will hear loud criticism just for taking what's there for him, as opposed to a guy like Dirk, for whom right now it's really just all about winning.
Guys have to make their own decisions. I mean, I know, knowing Dirk as well as I do, it's all about winning. Dirk, I think, has every penny he's ever been paid, so that's not an issue. He doesn't have to worry about money, and trust me, when we go out, he's not picking up the bill. So money's not a worry for him, and different guys are in different scenarios there. He just wants to win, and that's always the conversations we have, and, I get him involved with Donnie Nelson and I and Coach and, different personnel decisions. What do you think and where do we need, like on the Rondo deal. I ran it by him before, and Donnie did. And he was like, okay, what time do I pick him up at the airport?
He was all in.
He's all in, right? So, he's that connected to the franchise. He's that connected to winning. I mean, you look at, whether it's Tim Duncan, whether it's Manu, they've all made decisions like that too. And Kobe makes his own for his own.
On that, and I asked Dirk this as well, does it seem, or how does it seem when a system is set up to where players are looked at in a negative light if they take what they're, like Kobe did? Yeah. And it's like, oh, how could he do that? What's he doing to his team?
It only depends on what happens with the team. Right? If the Mavs were losing, if we were 11-26 instead of 26-11, they'd be calling him an idiot, right? Why'd you take less, right? If the Lakers were 26-11, it'd be like, look, Kobe's he did the exact right thing. So there's always context.
Where's this thing going to go, Mark? And we keep hearing all this talk about all the new TV money that's going to come in, an explosion in popularity of the league. The league, in my opinion, is in a really good place, first and foremost, because the stars are good guys. Yeah. I think that you're a league right now filled with superstars that parents can tell their kids they can look up to, that are telegenic, and I think for that reason more than any other, the league is in a good place, and it looks like there is $1 trillion on the way in a couple of years. Right. You would know far better than I. Where does all of it go once that happens?
Who knows? I mean, we have, there's the collective bargaining agreement that kind of sets the rules, and we give more than half of that money to the players. And so I think it's a fair system now, and I have no idea what's going to happen in 2 years, to be honest with you. History says the owners will find a way to blow it all on players, and, and we'll see what happens.
Outside of sports a little bit, it's actually in and out. The Mueller report came out for the NFL and said that they found the league or the league office didn't see the tape, but they didn't do enough in investigation. Sure. And we talked with Jerry Jones about that, and he had said one of the biggest things he has noticed since the quarter of a century he's owned the Cowboys is the social responsibility
yeah.
that football, and let me go now to you, sports has taken on. We've gone all the way from Charles Barkley saying, you know, I'm not a role model to your kids,
right,
to, as Greeny put it, this has now ended up in football and sports' kitchen, some of these horrific things like domestic violence. So what is the social responsibility of professional sports?
You know, I don't know that it's a social responsibility for sports. I think it's more individual responsibility. You know, back in the day, if you go through the 60s, 70s, 80s, I mean, I grew up in Pittsburgh, right? And during the 70s, during the heyday, and the stories were legendary about what guys were doing. You know
Sure,
better than I do. But there were maybe 2 guys that were brands in the NFL. There were maybe 3 guys that were brands in the NBA. Now everybody in professional sports is a brand, and it's not just because that's their intent, but because of social media. You know, you have your Twitter page, you hopefully are on CyberDust, you have Facebook, you have Instagram, you have Tumblr, you have all these outlets, and not only do you have an outlet to present yourself and kind of build your brand, but everybody else is watching you as well. And because everybody is watching you, you change your behavior. And so I think what's happened now is technology has really defined individual responsibility, and in aggregate, that's kind of created the responsibility of the leagues.
But should the leagues, I get it from the individual side of it, but should the leagues in policies and or programs have a responsibility?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, kids are coming, particularly with the NBA, kids are coming out so young, right? I mean, we were idiots when we were 19 and 20, so were they.
Yeah, that doesn't change.
That doesn't change, right? You know, we may be getting older, but they stay the same age. Yeah. and so, yeah, we need policies. I mean, we have a team psychologist. We have programs we put together. We brought in local domestic violence counselors to talk to our guys, to talk to wives and girlfriends, all different, you know, let them know about things that are going on. We have a program that when we bring somebody in that's a rookie or first-year player, they have to do, right? And there's responsibilities you have, and we try to teach you how to be a professional and what's expected of you as a Dallas Maverick. So, yes, I think more so than leagues, teams have responsibility because every market's different. And I think that's where things kind of fall apart because it's hard sometimes as an owner, general manager, coach, whatever it is, when you know there's warts, not to just turn a blind eye. And I think that's what happened to the NFL. You know, I think the most dangerous words in professional sports at the league organization is plausible deniability. You know, it's almost like one of the old Kevin Costner movies, right? Yeah, plausible. And that's what happened. And you always got to remember the commissioners work for the owners. And, you know, if you don't know, you can't tell. And if you don't have anything to tell, it's okay in everybody's mind until it's not. And so I don't think, you know, then the next question is anything structurally really changed after all that? And I think the answer is no. Nothing's, you know, lots of programs,
right?
Lots of announcements, and the NBA is just as guilty sometimes. But I think, you know, you have to ask at the team level, because all these teams have team you know, in the NFL in particular, they have team psychologists. You would think if there's somebody with a domestic abuse problem, they would know. You know, and are you asking, you know, do you want to be told? Like in my case, you know, because there's confidentiality issues, I'll talk to our team psychologist. I'll say, is there anything, you know, you can't tell me, but I need to be aware of? You know, let's pay attention to this guy. Let's pay attention to that guy. You know, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's whatever, you need to know. And if it's a problem, you know, then the next question is, do you just throw them on the street and say, it's not my problem anymore? Or do you say, look, we're going to get you help? And hopefully, I know in our experiences with the Mavs and things that haven't come out publicly, we get them help.
Mark Cuban is here. With that thought in mind, you are one who runs in so many different business circles. How different is sports? Mike and I sometimes refer to sports as not being in the real world. But then you have situations like these, and it feels very much a part of the real world. Just how different is a sports business, running a sports business, from running another?
I mean, it's night and day for 10% of it. Right, the 10%, and you talk about it's not so much social responsibility, but it's just the role that sports plays in people's lives, particularly kids. There, you know, well, first off, there's no, you know, when Google has a world-class quarter, nobody throws a parade.
Right. That's right.
You know, when you're on your best year ever, there's no parade.
Unless you got a lot of stock.
Well, no, you might throw your own personal parade, right? But so that's one. Two, you know, there's no other business I've ever had where you get emails or calls or whatever, letters asking if, you know, my son who's in his last months of his life. You know, there was a kid, Briggs, that was 17, and he was going through just this horrific disease, and you couldn't tell by looking at him. And his spirit was strong, and I used to have him come and sit next to me during the games. And then, when the kid passes, you don't get that in an ordinary course of business and outside of professional sports. And so, that connection to the community, the fact that I say it all the time, I don't own the Mavs, North Texas owns the Mavs. It's just different.
And the other side of it, I've quoted you in this discussion you and I had, you'll never remember, but many years ago you came to ESPN and I interviewed you on SportsCenter.
Right.
And we were talking, this was before you had won the championship, and we talked about the fact that sports is maybe the only business where there are two separate goals, and sometimes they compete with each other. There's bottom line, which every other business is concerned about, making money, and then there's winning championships, which sometimes works in the face of that. How does a good sports owner straddle that line, walk the line between the two?
It really depends. I think what's changing in a lot of ways, because the price of franchises has gone up so high that, for the most part, with Steve Ballmer kind of being the exception, one guy can't afford to write a check. Like, I couldn't just afford to write a check for an NFL team if that's what I wanted to do. It's just they're too expensive. And so you've got these groups buying teams, and you have a responsibility to 20 other guys, basically, or women, and more often than not, they want a return on their capital. And so that changes how you manage a team. I'm fine. I'm not going to the poorhouse no matter what.
Right.
I'd rather have another ring, another parade, than another $10 million.
But is there a line for you to that?
And that's one of the reasons the CBA is important, because it protects me from myself. But that's in basketball, right? Like, when I looked at buying a baseball team before my buddy Bud prevented that from happening, everybody thought that I was going to be the next George Steinbrenner, just spend. But what I liked about baseball was brains mattered more than money. Right, and in basketball that's less so. But brains matter. Don't get me wrong. Right, you can't make mistakes and hope they just go away. But in baseball, you can discover stars. You can build stars. Right, you can develop stars. In basketball, that's much more difficult.
You thought they were. I agreed with you. You were interested in buying into baseball. You were involved with the Rangers. You looked into a little bit with the Cubs. You think they didn't want you, right? You think they didn't want you part of the club?
They told me. They told me at the Texas Rangers thing, they told me, one of the co-owners between baseball and the NBA came up and said, don't even do it.
So that won't change with a new commissioner?
I'm sure it will, but now that my kids are getting older, they're too much fun. Right, and baseball would be too much time.
Mark Cuban is here on our set, and you and the Mavericks have done a commercial supporting the Cowboys. Yeah. I find that fascinating. Sometimes I think we look at a situation like that and assume it is a competitive situation.
Well, it is somewhat,
to some degree.
Right? Yeah, because we overlap the seasons. And look, I'd be lying if I said when they opened up the new stadium, it didn't hurt our business. Right, but that's just the way it works, right? Business is business, and it's going to be competitive. But at the same time, we're going to support our home teams. And if it was the Stars, the hockey team, if it's the Rangers, we supported them, and it's definitely the Cowboys. And so, we did a cool little commercial that will release first on the website and it'll run in the Dallas market, just with all of our players saying, throw up the X and supporting, and supporting the Cowboys.
That's cool. That's a cool thing to do. On this injury with Aaron Rodgers, so let's put it because you're very involved, obviously, with your team. So let's go to a situation for you. It would be a winner-take-all, Game 7 type of a situation, and it's Dirk, and say it's a calf. And so they're doing the treatment. You can work on it. How much do you get involved in that? If the player wants to play, is it the right thing to do if he pops it again? I mean,
it just depends. Is it career-threatening? Or there's pain and there's injury.
Yes.
Right? And so is it a career-threatening injury? You sit him no matter what. Right, you have to respect the player. Is it okay? You're in a little bit of pain. You're going to be sore for a couple weeks after the game.
Maybe you tear it again a little bit, which ain't
the doctor's going to tell. I'm not making that call.
Right.
The doctor's telling me, and then the player's telling you how his body feels, knowing that like you said, if you get into that all-out sprint and you're pulling up lame, you pull him. And we've had those types of situations before, and and sometimes it can be a problem, but it just depends on the player. It also depends how old they are. This is your one run. This could be your last run. You put a splint on it.
Players want to play. I mean, they want to play.
Yeah. Players more than anybody realize, particularly as they get older. If you're 33, 34 in the NBA, and this might be your only run, you're going to have to be bleeding, before they take you out of the game.
Mark Cuban is here. Many know him, obviously, from Shark Tank on ABC and syndicated around the country. Golik's fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by just the concepts. And I'm curious about this. If you read like one of the Malcolm Gladwell books or something like that, there's two different sides to someone like you. First, you had the idea, right? I mean, for those who don't know, you made your money in something called broadcast.com, which you
We
sold.
started the whole streaming industry.
Yeah, and basically for Billy. So you had a vision of what the future was going to be, and you were right, and you made a ton of money doing it. That's one thing. Now you have the money, you run a bunch of businesses, and you have to learn how to manage people, and that's a totally different thing, right, versus being a visionary. So how is it different, and what skills are involved in what you do now versus the previous?
Well, there's two. The reason they're completely different is the pressure's different, right? When I was starting my first company, sleeping on the floor, it's like make or break, right? If it doesn't work, I'm back working as a bartender, and so the pressure's different. But it's still, when you're managing people or you're a leader in one way or another, then it's just about defining what you're trying to do, what's your vision, and then putting up people in a position to succeed to help you get there and helping them see it. And if you're good at that, then things work, and if not, then things fall apart. It's not easy, and with all these Shark Tank companies, golly, it's probably close to 50 of them now. I mean, I can't be involved in day to day, but I've got like 10, 12 people that work for me that help me with these companies, and I get weekly reports every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, depending on your day. You send me a report. Bad news first. Because I expect good news. I don't want to get all, oh, this is great. That's why I invested, because I expect it to be great. I want the bad news first so I can help you, and then I can guide you through it, and then, hopefully that's the leadership and management skill I provide.
Not many people can be you and the guys and the guys and gals, the Lauries and the Barbaras and the Kevins of the world that sit there. Most are the others trying to present to you. When you're doing that and you see people that want to be you and sitting in your seat, can you tell right away, this guy or this girl, they're not very savvy, but they have a good product, or, boy, they have a bad product, but, boy, they're pretty smart, and how that all works?
Yeah, it's hard because it's kind of like a first date. Everyone looks good and sounds good and says the right thing on a first date, right? And so it's hard. So I'll look at the company, and do I think the company has a chance? And if I do, then I'll keep on thinking. Otherwise, I'm zoned out, right? If I think the person is really smart, but the company's there's just something a little bit off, then I'm interested, right? Because if I can bring some of my expertise and help them, then maybe we can propel it further. And then sometimes, if it's really small and it's, not a big investment, then I just feel like it's the right thing to do and sends the right message, then I'll do it as well.
The beauty is when somebody gets too smart for their own good up there, then truly the shark comes into play as you guys circle.
If someone's like the Harvard MBA, I think, I love to mess with those guys, right? Or somebody has a scam product, like we had the balance bracelets and stuff like that. Or, we had these guys come on with a pill. They said that makes your body act like it can go into hibernation like a bear. And so you can go 8 days without eating and lose weight. I'm like, are you kidding me? And so, and the producers, they have to have a balance of, great ideas, great companies, and crazy ones. So, but I like the crazy ones. And then the thing I hate when they come on, I hate kids coming on the show. I don't like to talk because you can't be honest, right? And because not all the time, but every now and then we'll have a parent who's basically pimping their kid. And the rules of the show are you're allowed to have the kid out there during the presentation, but once we start asking questions, they're supposed to go to the back. And every now and then when you see a kid that stays out there during the questions, it's because the parents just are pimping them. And so, like one guy, but I had to go to him. I had to go to the daughter. I'm like, do you know what earmuffs are? Because I was about to rip the dad. So, there's a balance, but I hate when kids come on.
Well, it's tough, too. There wasn't even a kid. This one girl that told her parents she didn't want to be a doctor had the box thing, and the box that kind of you didn't have to put together, and she basically cried up there until Barbara did a deal with her, felt bad for her. I said, that's got to be a killer up there to try and say no to the young adults of the world. Yeah,
just kids. You just don't want to tell them no.
Mike and Mark Cuban, and then to take it back again to the NBA, it's one thing to run a business, and then it's another thing to be one of 30 other incredibly rich, smart, talented, successful people, and have to all agree to make decisions one way or another. And you have one person in the middle, at this point, Adam Silver, previously David Stern, whose job it is to try and get you all going in the same direction. Just how complicated is something like that? On the worst day, how hard is it?
It's gotten easier because the owners have gotten smarter. When I first came in, there were a lot of guys and women who had inherited their teams. Dad gave it to them, or it was just an afterthought. They won it in a poker game, whatever. And they've been in the NBA for years and years and years. And so, those guys had a different mentality, the old school guys. Now, I mean, there's hedge fund guys. Everybody's smart. and so it makes competing, it makes, the thought process completely different. There's more of a global feel. It's just, it's better though, right? Because, the guys that are in, the women who are in there now we're a lot less obstinate, right? We're a lot more team oriented. It's a lot more global. It's a lot, let's move this league forward, as opposed to, what the hell do you know? This is the way we've always done it.
And the global part of it, and we'll take a quick break and come back with a few other thoughts. The global part of it, I think, has been almost ridiculously successful, right? I mean, when you look, I made the comment yesterday, Dirk Nowitzki is the greatest foreign player in the history of the NBA, and people started screaming at me. I don't count guys like Hakeem Olajuwon, guys who played college in the United States. Right. But now you start looking at the list, and you look at the most important players in the league between Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. And
those are the old guys. I mean, if you talk about now, young, you look at the Bucks, and you look at these different teams, there's no question. This gets to a whole other question about AAU and college and one and done. International players are prepared to be NBA athletes, and it's analogous to someone who wants to be a cello player in an orchestra, right? If you want to be a cello player in the United States in an orchestra and you grow up, and your parents kind of push you, and you practice all the time, you're getting the best instruction, and your school isn't complaining, right? You can't do that if you want to be a basketball, football player, or whatever, right? Because there's all these crazy rules, and so kids migrate to programs like the AAU where they have more time to play, but the instruction's horrible. And that's really held back American players, and it's got to change.
Well, I was going to say, will it change?
It has to change. It has to.
Otherwise, what begins that? What's the beginning of that change?
15 years from now, we wake up and only 10% of players are American.
But in order, I guess what I'm saying is, who then makes the decision? Wait a minute. Stop. This isn't working.
No, look,
and
we're all talking
direction.
already about, look, something's wrong with the AAU, something's wrong with one and done. Not every kid. I mean, if you're going to be one and done, are you really a student athlete?
No.
That's the big question, right? Could the NBA DL ever become that? The NBA?
Yeah, absolutely.
Could they become a true minor league, like minor league baseball?
No question. I mean, we talked about it all the time. Okay, which schools can we work with locally? If you're geared towards college, boom. We'll set up a program so you can take classes. But we'd make it so that when you're working during the season, it'd be a minimal amount, and then during the summers, you'd go to classes more to get your degree, and then we'd be those kids who aren't college material, let's say, we'd set up life skills programs, because that's part of the problem. If a kid isn't geared towards school, they not only do they not get taught anything in 1 year, right? I mean, look, anything else in any other business of mine, if a kid dropped out after his freshman or sophomore year, you might as well have not gone to college. Right, because taking introduction to sociology and freshman English.
What did we learn our freshman year outside of where are the best spots to go hang out?
Yeah, well, exactly, right. So it's a non-education, right? You were not a student athlete, and so you've got to slice out that hypocrisy and say, what's the best way to put this kid in a position to succeed? If he's successful in the NBA, then you've got great life skills, and if not, then you've got a foundation to go back to school, and hopefully we'll support that and pay for it and do all those types of things because you gave your life to us. And there's club programs overseas that have a model like that. There's a lot of different ways to do it.
Makes all the sense in the world, which is one of the reasons that I'm skeptical that it'll ever happen. Mike, we have a special gift to give to Mark Cuban, which he is going to really appreciate.
Oh, my God.
And we will do that in just a moment. And this one's us. Mike and Mike, as we continue live in Fort Worth, I jumped the gun on a previous commercial.
You leave us alone. Mark and I are having a conversation.
Dolik is trying to make a business deal with Mark. How often does that happen? Mark Cuban is here on our set.
Never. I was just going to say, how much when I brought anything up about it where you're like, oh my God, I want to hear this 100 times a day.
Well, I'd rather listen to that than the commercial. So,
but I think movie producers and people like that probably have people walking up to them every single day. I've got a script. I've got a this. I've got a that.
The scripts are the worst because with the script it's all subjective, right? And so in their mind, it's the best script ever, and if they only get Leo, it'll be a huge hit, So those are the worst. I hate hearing about.
Plus, are you going to take time to read a script?
No, I did early on. I did. Yeah, early on I did, but I got out of that.
Where are the egos bigger, in the NBA or in Hollywood?
Hollywood,
bigger.
Oh, it's not even close. It's not even close because talent is so subjective, but there's no wins and losses. In the NBA, scoreboard, right? You know what you did, and there's a box score. There's no box score.
Ego bigger in the NBA, Hollywood, or Kevin O'Leary on Shark Tank?
Kevin O'Leary's got no ego. He's just he's a jerk. I hate the guy.
He's got an ego too, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah, I like Kevin. I like to pick on him even more.
Mike and Mark Cuban is here with us. I do think that's fascinating to live in as many different worlds as you live in and see that. But you're saying that the egos in Hollywood are bigger. But with Mark Cuban here, so interesting to talk about so many different things. And what is your read on when people will read almost gleefully, wow, Tom Hanks got paid $20 million to make this movie. With the back end, Jack Nicholson got $100 million on this movie. And then a ball player signs a big contract and people are yelling and screaming. Why? Why the difference in public perception?
One, there's no salary cap in Hollywood, right? So there's no impact. Two, you don't really root for Tom Cruise, right? Your emotions don't go up and down with Tom's movies. I think because we have such a strong emotional attraction to sports, we want our team to win. And if money, goes from one guy to another, or you spend all your money on one guy, you're going to be upset if it doesn't deliver. Whereas with, Tom's, say what you want about his acting skills, you don't really care. If you go to the movie, you go to the movie. If he's on TV, great. That's just the way it works.
What's next for the NBA in your mind, their next step?
That's a great question. Me, I want to fix the officiating. So that's a never-ending journey.
Battle for you.
Yeah. I think I still feel that it's ridiculous that we're the only professional league where fans, some think the league is still fixed. I think we've done a great job of pushing that down, but it's still there. So fixing that, I think, we'll do a lot more digitally. There's so many things that'll change over time. And I think what Adam and David started this, but what we're great at is understanding what the latest, greatest social media platform is. And just transversing that whole world, and I think we'll use that to lever up. There's new technology that the Mavs just installed called Freed, F-R-E-E-D, and what it does is we installed 29 of the highest resolution cameras available, and it makes everything within its view, everything that happens on the court, data as opposed to video, which means, and if you Google Freed and Mavs, you'll see some of the things we posted. You can look from Dirk, what did Dirk see in this play? So from a fan's perspective, you can rotate the whole field of view and say, well, Dirk, he couldn't see this guy, right? It wasn't that he missed him, he couldn't see it. Or, for out-of-bounds plays, you'll just rotate the whole picture, and you won't have to see, did this angle catch it? It'll just change the game.
Mike and Mike, Mark Cuban is here. I wonder just quickly on this, and then I have one more thing I want to get to. How perceptible a difference can you already sense in the leadership of Adam Silver versus David Stern? We've just in interview scenarios, they're such different guys in so many ways. How different would you say that it is a year ago?
I think, it's no knock on David, but Adam's more inclusive. Adam wants to hear you out, where David has his mindset. He knows where he's going, and he wants us to get there the best way possible. And they're just different. And I think, Adam brought in people that are more supportive of that approach. And that's ruffled a few feathers in the NBA, but I think it's better for the league.
And then finally, I thought of you. I remember you were on talking. I think of you all the time, Mark.
Thank you.
But
hopefully during the day.
When that thing happened with Sony and all of that huge leak and that extraordinarily disturbing circumstance, among the many things I thought of was your project Cyberdust, which you were on with us promoting recently, which is, it's basically like Snapchat, only you can't save it.
What it is, it's a whole privacy platform. Right. So, on one hand, you can do messaging, so we can send messages. So, Sony's a perfect example. One of my emails was in there and talking about Shark Tank and our negotiations. And so, just that this was in September, right when I sent that email, I said, okay, first email, this is it. Everything else we're going to negotiate on Cyberdust, because I don't want any of this leaking in any way, shape, or form. As it turns out, it was a great move because all the other emails to everybody else got leaked, right in the hack. With Cyberdust, on one hand, businesses use it for messaging. Businesses use it to send updates. It's almost like a private Twitter. So we'll send out stuff. I'll blast out stuff to hundreds of thousands of people, and it gives you a chance to interact privately and honestly. Real quick, on Twitter, when you guys post something, you have to think, what are the haters going to say? Right? What are the trolls going to say? On Cyberdust, you can get followers, but when you blast it out, and you see me blast something from Blog Maverick, a quote a day, I don't have to worry about it, because if a hater comes back and says, oh, you suck, the Mav sucks, I'm the only one who sees it. And there's no point in being a troll if no one else sees it, right? And so, as a result of that, the interactions on Cyberdust are a lot more honest, the communities are a lot more open, and it's just blowing up. And one other thing we used it for, we gave away 20 tickets to the national championship game. And so, it's just a way for us to communicate with a lot of people.
That is terrific. And
cool.
Speaking of gifts, there's no way. We so appreciate you coming, Mike. Let's make a presentation, if you will.
What do you give the man who has everything? An ESPN bag.
It's a canvas bag.
An ESPN water bottle.
We thought you'd like the water bottle.
I know. Hold the tears in. Hold the tears in.
Look at the T-shirt.
A T-shirt.
Oh my God!
Yeah. It's, you know what? You're going home.
You talked to my wife, didn't you?
Yeah. Here, let me put it all in the bag for you. You take this with you, Mark. That's our appreciation.
It's a token of, you know what, I think, you know, is so special that I can't take this.
Mark, thank you very much. It's really such a pleasure to see Mark Cuban. What a terrific show.
This has been the Best of Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio Pod Center. To hear more from Mike and Mike, log on to ESPNRadio.com and become an ESPN Radio Insider.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Why do we snack? Hunger? Taste? Because we have nothing better to do? Well, people who snack on almonds not only have something better to do, they're doing it. Almonds are heart health for those with heart. Packed with energy to keep up with anyone. It's that one-of-a-kind crunch that promises to keep you in the game for a long time to come. California almonds. Crunch on.